Best. Oh, beautiful football. This man is a genius.
On the field, it was like that. If someone said it's impossible to beat four men, I would try and beat four men because it was the dare that said you can't do it. And I don't actually believe that nothing's impossible, but there's very few things impossible. And I would have a go at anything.
More words have been written and spoken about George Best than about any other British sportsman. Few have done justice to his talent. There was an unfettered joy about the way he played. He combined grace with courage, pace with unbelievable balance. He was balletic and yet at the same time aggressive, warming to the heart yet clinically cold in his application. At times he could be as frustrating to colleagues as he was to his opponents, the little boy who claimed it was his ball. But he was the master of the unexpected, and for every mazy dribble which ended in chains, there was another which would suddenly break free. The most gifted of Saturday's heroes and the most tormented. That he lost his way on the road away from football is now documented in legal as well as journalistic records. His story has become a confusion of self-destruction and blurred images. Yet the true nature of the Best has changed little, if at all.
George, in your book, there's one rather nice line where you talk about Wyatt Earp and OK Corral and saying, never mind the truth, let's get on with the legend.
Mm-hmm. When I first started playing, I was the same as most kids. You know, I like to see my name in the papers and read about myself, no matter what it was. And I purposely used to do little things, knowing that I'd get my name in the paper. But it really did sort of backfire, so to speak. Became an ogre, really. And, little things, like the women and the troubles and the fights and the so-called barroom brawls, stuff like that, are really completely exaggerated.
But how much do you have a responsibility for that?
I think I happen to believe that all along the way I was the same as everybody else. Yeah, if you're in places where they're serving drink, you get in fights sooner or later. You know, if you drive fast cars, sooner or later you're going to have a bang in it. But if you're a personality, it's different. You know, it really is, particularly in this country. I happen to believe that all great athletes in our country are treated deplorably by the press. Absolutely disgraceful. And I've always said that. I think they believe that they've put you on that pedestal, so they're entitled to knock you off whenever they want, which is a terrible way of thinking, really.
Do you think you have the right to be treated differently?
I don't think you have the right, but the point is that you are treated differently. You know, I'm treated differently if I walk in a restaurant in comparison to Joe Bloggs and his wife. I know I get the best tables, or if I have a taxi driving down the street and there's two of us waving for it, I know that I'm more likely to get it than the other guy. I don't expect it, but it's a fact of life. So it is different.
What about being treated differently in a football sense?
I still believe if someone has got a talent or a gift or is different or is an individual or a character or whatever you want to call them, they have to be treated differently. That's unfortunately what's wrong with the game in a lot of ways today. Players are treated like sheep. They're not. If I was in charge of a team and I had the greatest player in the country or in the world, and he wanted one day to turn up with no socks on, I would let him do it. If he was doing the things I asked him to do on the field.
He was born in Belfast in 1946, at a time when ugliness was only a description of the red brick streets.
I ran around with a sort of, not a street gang, but a crowd of lads in Belfast. And we had this sort of bridge at the bottom of our street, and all the kids could jump from the top to the bottom, but no one had ever jumped from the bottom to the top. And of course, Muggins here, they said it was impossible, so I had to try it. Almost ruined my sexual life before it even started. I got halfway across and smacked into an iron bar that was sticking out of the cement.
What was family life like? What's your first memories of it?
Very, very happy. Yeah, I've lovely memories of home. We were never well off, and I was the first of 6 eventually, and Mother really was the one who was the sporting influence, I suppose. The youth club that I played for, my mother did all the kit, made the oxo for half time or whatever we had, and brought it up to the field at the top of the street. My whole life revolved around football.
What did your father do?
He worked in the shipyards. He was an iron turner in the shipyards. My mother always had part-time jobs. She worked in an ice cream factory and in a cigarette factory, fish and chip shops, and anything, just to bring a few extra bob in. And most of the money was spent on new shoes for me, because I wore them out in about a week, usually.
You had a grandfather, too, who was quite an influence on you, didn't you?
Yes, Sundays were sort of, in those days, a family get-together down at Grandfather Withers' house. And he was very strict. He was probably my first hero. Very tall, statuesque, greying hair. He was, I think the whole family looked up to him. He was a disciplinarian, but in a nice way. He was probably the forerunner to Sir Matt Busby. Very, very similar in a lot of ways. Strict when he had to be, but lovable with it. And things like, we weren't supposed to have the TV on a Sunday. So we took turns in sitting. He'd go off for his Sunday nap while we watched TV. And we took it in turns to sit guard at the bottom of the stairs, so we could hear him getting up, so we could switch the TV off. But the same thing. Happy days. We were just one big happy family in those days.
Were you worried about your physique? Because Glenn Torn turned you down, didn't he?
I remember when we used to do gym work, I was the only kid in the class that kept his vest on because I was so embarrassed about how I looked. And I thought, well, there's no way. That's why my dreams never got beyond maybe hoping to play Irish League football.
But more experienced eyes saw a brighter future.
Bob Bishop, the scout for Manchester United, virtually turned up on our doorstep one day and asked if I'd like to go to Manchester United. And it was as simple as that. And I was playing football at the top of the street when it happened, so my parents called me down and explained to me. And, I was in the daze, obviously. Skinny little kid going off. And I remember they told me I dashed out of the house straight back up to the game that was going on at the top of the street, and just ran on and told all my friends I was going to play for Manchester United. That was it. There was no trial period, no signing on. It was all done.
Eric McMordy, later to play with George for Northern Ireland, joined him on the short boat journey to 1,000,000 miles away. The little lads from Belfast were babes in a new world.
That first night, we were so uneasy. It was a new thing for us, and Eric was a little bit more forward than I was. I was very quiet and shy. And he just said to me, do you want to go home? We'd been there half a day or something. And we talked about it and decided, we didn't want to be away from home. And really, we didn't think we were going to make it. So the next day after training, we told Joe Armstrong that we wanted to go home. And they were tremendous about it. I suppose, looking back, they were used to things like that, with kids first time away from home, which is why they weren't that surprised, I think. So the following night, we headed back to Belfast, both of us.
But they brought you back?
I think about a week later, maybe 10 days later. I went back on my own. More determined, obviously. I felt a little bit I'd let them down, as well as myself, of course. So I went back determined that, at least I'd have a go and see what happened.
Home from home for the 15-year-old Best was with Mrs. Mary Fullaway, the most legendary of United's landladies. She didn't know then that the new apprentice would become her most famous and infamous tenant. July 1961. For Matt Busby, a time of doubt. The great days before the Munich air crash were now but a bittersweet memory.